While I'm walking back up front, I'm going to give you an update on the electrical company, and this video is going to take a little while to get out, but getting the electric here is not as easy as it sounds. So we want to prioritize getting our electric fences up and getting our animal health and safety straight before we get occupancy. Or we're not actually going to have occupancy because there's nobody going to live here full time, but somebody's going to be coming by here every morning, afternoon, and evening. And so we want to make sure at least we have sanitation here in case you got to drop a deuce. But I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead, and I'm out here on site after a big rain. I just did a video about what happens after a rain and some of the maintenance things you want to look for. And right now I'm going to share with you kind of the project update, because two very important things when you're working on these projects. You need to know who's pulling the permits, and you got to keep your contractors working. I've done videos about managing your contractors and how important it is to stay on top of your contractors. And many of your contractors, especially if you're working with a project manager on, say, electrical company, they're going to also keep on top of the contractors. But we're behind 3 months because the electrical folks didn't get out here and do their thing. Now, again, we built up the areas we needed to build up. We didn't sit around and wait for them. But I would have liked to have already had power on site. It'd have been a lot nicer to already have power, because we could at least start our fences, fire up those fences to get the goats out here. Because a lot of this pine, that's the goats aren't going to do much for that. But look at this over here. All that calorie out in those trees, the goats could be growing off of that. The goats could be cleaning that up for us. And then there's a lot of briars and vines and stuff, a lot of pick that the goats could be in there doing their thing. So how do we stay on top of our contractors? First off, you need a written project plan so you know exactly where you are and what you're doing, and so that you know that after the pad's put in, the containers need to be on order. Now, we're having rain delays because of the storms. It is June 2023, and there's some massive storm events coming through. So those rain delays are going to push out my containers a little bit, but the containers still got to keep coming this way. So we're going for the containers to drop in the back here. Camera looks like it's having some problems. The containers are dropping on the back there because the pad is done. I don't know if you can see that pad, but there's a couple videos. Links will probably be in the description. In this case, power requires easements, potential easements, to get it in. So they were telling me, hey, I'm going to need an easement from these neighbors. It's going to add a month or two to the project. I have to know to ask them the question, based on this site, what can you do now to get me power? Okay, what could you do today to get me power? So we went from a 2-month to a 6-month window to a 2-week window by putting power at the front of the property. Now, I was able to get online with the electrical contractor. So we have the power company, and then we have the electrical contractor. The power company is going to get us power from the road. Now, these are things that I wasn't clear about just 6 months ago. And I'm passing it along to you because it's pretty much the same everywhere. And it's information that I got from the contractors themselves, as well as experienced folks in my region that kind of get me some feedback, general contractors. So here you go. The electrical company is going to put in a permanent post for the permanent power, and then run that to what we're going to have is a building. So we're going to have a small building that's going to be where we're charging batteries, where we've got a generator set up, where we're connecting possibly to a well pump. And unfortunately, that's got to be way on the beginning of the property instead of way back here. So unfortunately, it's 1,000 feet away from our target destination. Now, do I want to be off by 1,000 feet, or do I want to wait 8 months? 8 months puts us in winter. I'm swatting flies, but it's also no way I'm going to wait till winter to get that in, because then it'll be too wet. And they can't drop the wire anyway, so they're going to say, oh, it's got to be another 6 months. Do you see what we're talking about here? So when your plans don't work out, you have to figure out a way to work the longer term solution, which in this particular site is getting power here to charge a fence. There's a 1/2 mile or to a 1/4 mile long fence. It's going to be along this side. It's going to be hot. To get water, there'll be a 1/2 mile, 1/4 mile of water running back there down the property to keep the animals in water. There may be power going down there, which we're to talk to the contractor, and they're going to figure out if we can run power that long different hookups. There's the modules that we're going to connect to have that power on these sites. Can we have 110 down here? Because if you're running a water trough and you've got water gravity feeding into it, maybe you've got you've got one of those hydrants you can open up, and you've got a float valve on the tank. We'll go over these designs later, but that float valve keeps the tank topped off. What if it freezes? Okay, so we're going to need hose. The hose warmer goes around the hose. We're going to need a floating heater in the water, keep that water from freezing over. And that water is more likely going to be in this main area, because if we overwinter any animals, they'll be in this main area where we can get to them easily. But in order to keep that water from freezing up, and now we're in a temperate climate, it may not freeze up. We may be able to get away with a thermostat on it, and it only comes on from time to time. The wattage could be 8,500 watts to run the heaters in the water and to keep that thing up and going. Now, if all I can get is water down this end, I may have to have a pump over here, put the water in a cistern for the rest of the year, so that I have enough water on site without having to push that pump to get the water up here, because my head pressure may be pretty low. So I may have water coming up from the ground, but the gallons per minute that I can pull in the pump may not support the short-term needs I have for animals. And so those tanks will give me that short-term need, and then they can fill up around the clock based on the gallon flow rates of my water. That's the next thing I got to schedule, is to get out the pump contractor, because the pump contractor wouldn't even talk about a date, because they're backlogged. Wouldn't even talk about a date until I had some power on site here. So again, I want you to understand what's going on, because you're going to see a lot of YouTube channels. They're like, we're just doing this and we're doing that, and then it just magically happens. But the truth of it is, from a project management perspective, from getting this stuff done as like a permanent, it's done, you either hire a project manager who deals with all this stuff, or you learn to deal with it yourself. And then again, I believe the project management skills that we teach and I've learned myself, the project management skills have universal value, because once you have the power, once you have the water, once you have your shelter, once you have your access, once you have your sanitation and stuff, every one of those things is a project. Then you're going to have, in this case, we're going to have an aquaculture system up here. We're going to have the goats system. Then we're going to have the piggy system. And then we might have some duck system. And we might have, do you see how it works? Now, each of those projects are going in one at a time. This isn't going to become a petting zoo. This is food we're growing here. But again, we want to make sure that those animals have the safety and security that any human would have on the property, and that they're able to get the water they need, to get the food that they need, and then that we're building infrastructure in accordance to long-term plans. Okay, because if I put a building down here that has our power coming in, I want that building built so it can be taken apart and moved to the next location. How do we do that? We put it in a shed. The shed has disconnects and everything. We just put it on a trailer and move it up this way. But again, if it has to be down there for 2 years, then I want a shed that's going to be suitable for the 2 years or 3 years or however it has to go. So because we're in an awkward economic situation. So a lot of you folks that are bugging out, so per se, or to buy that rural land so they can get away from the rules and regulations of the city, you got to understand that if you don't run project management on your activity, you're going to realize there's permits, there's licensing, there's whether or not the guy likes the color of your hat. And he's going to, well, I don't know if we can get this done this way. A lot of this design is done off the fly. It's not based on standards. In fact, a lot of these YouTube videos, you see people building tiny houses, you should ask the question, are they following international fire code? Okay? There are some ways you can go around the code, because like maybe you're building an earthen building and you got clay walls. But if you're putting up plywood on your walls inside your tiny house, that's a death trap. That's something. Just all that shiplap looks great. It doesn't have a fire. It catches on fire. If it catches on fire, it doesn't have that slow burn 5-minute delay type stuff that you would with, say, drywall or some structured material, concrete board, whatever. Anyway, my point is, while we've had a couple setbacks around power, I got other things in the queue that are running along. I've got projects that are finished that need to be checked on. I've got fencing that needs to go in. Fencing is a project of its own. There's some supply issues because I want to still get some gardens going here. So if for example, I'm not really going to walk over to it, but if they're not going to be able to put that underground cable in, for the power, then I need to get grass growing on the area where they're going to disturb, or I need to get something growing on that area so that I don't have bare soil. This road itself is probably going to need to be repaired. One of the things that I'm noticing is some wet spots. That's again why we don't drive on the roads within 72 hours of a rain event, because we want that water to soak. You can see my trucks out here on the rock that was Forestry Road. And I really don't know what else there is other than to give you the encouragement that once you get started on one of these projects, you do your best to finish. You will have setbacks. I've been out here twice today with different vendors. I've had people tell me, you know, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. Contrary to what they told me last month that I could do and can't do. And it's just the way it is. And sometimes those are real, sometimes they're not. But ultimately, you get the right vendors in place, you get the right project plan, and you manage the activity the right way. And I know a lot of you guys have full-time jobs, but you still got to manage the job, or you got to get somebody to manage it for you. When we do farm management, or we manage people's property or do plans for people's property, that's because they're hiring experts rather than trying to figure it all out themselves and never getting it done. There's a reason your dream hasn't happened yet, and it might be you. So I'm hoping these videos give you the private moment to allow you to address that, and then start getting work done through other people. There are great tradesmen out there. There are great professionals. There are folks down at the county office that can give you insights. And if you document these insights, you start building out your project plan, you start thinking about how things need to go, you get a third-party, second-party opinion, you'll be up and going before you know it. Worst case, you'll take a survival course, you'll be living in a tent out here with no power because the only power they'd bring to you is 1,000 feet from your home base camp. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead, and I'm gonna sign out and go back home, take a shower. I got a meeting tonight. I'm here to help you transform your dream into a reality when it comes to your small farm or your homestead. I'm bringing you a practical and a rational look at this. I know other channels talk about the fantasy, and they talk about all the exciting factors. Believe me, in my heart, I know they're the same. I lit up when I came around the corner and saw those pigeons kind of fly off there, and then the wildlife and stuff that I'm seeing around this place as we restore this neglected farm. And then I want to make sure that you have the support that you need along the way, because a lot of those other channels, they're going to get you all hyped up, and then you're going to go out and burn a bunch of money on some fantasy thing going on when you could get started today. I've already shown you how day one you can start using your land, how within the first week you can start enjoying your land, and now how do you build out a homestead? How do you build out an agricultural property that has restorative value to the environment, that has food security for you and your family, and has a lifetime of experience and enjoyment? Again, I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead, and I'll see you in the next video.